sorry. If you haven't been on Zooms at all recently, aren't you lucky? I hope your days have been all right. I'm in Kent, and it's actually, there's been some sunshine. So Manchester, any luck? Yeah. What a difference, hey? What a difference it makes to have, first of all, the solstice, so that there's an extra, sense of light everywhere, and then a bit of sunshine. My God, it makes a difference. By the way, you might think, who's this random woman? I'm Jude Kelly, by the way. I'm the artistic director of the Ripples of Hope Festival, and I'm here with Dennis and Rachel and Maria. We're all the team, along with Sugra, who's here too, and Caroline, who's here. So we're putting on this big festival in September, over 5 days, looking at what are the practical realities of human rights. And then we're doing an event in May online about the penal reform in relationship to an exhibition which we're doing at home with the Kersler Trust, that it's arts works by people in secure environments. So part of what we're doing, and some of you know this very well, is we're wanting to create community feasting. We want people to gather, to come together, to talk, to find ways of breaking bread, both literally and metaphorically, and to make a process of both healing and unification around the idea of feast. And many of you have signed up to do this already. And some of you might be joining for the first time thinking, this sounds quite interesting. What is it? So I'm just going to do the what is it very quickly for anybody who doesn't kind of know. We're inviting people, and you are self-elected, to either provide a venue or provide your human power to work out what a community feast could look like if you did it, or if you were part of a team that did it. We're gradually providing the tools for the doing, the tools being like the methodology of having conversations, the way that the food might be prepared, the sort of the elements that will make it a positive and powerful experience. It's very much something that could have a legacy. That would be the intention, that the legacy would be that when the communities gathered, either communities who already knew each other but perhaps hadn't met for a long time, or communities who have been polarized for lots of different reasons. We all know the structural inequalities that bring about particular kinds of polarizations. But at any rate, these are kind of positive celebratory moments. When we first started planning it, we didn't have COVID. But now that we have COVID in our midst, then provided September is in any way you might describe as post-COVID, or even if it's living with COVID, whatever it is, we hope it will be a time when people can reunite physically. And that's where the community feasts come in. Although we are also planning hybrid feasts. We're also kind of thinking about what digital feasts look like. So on some of these calls, one of the calls, we've shared where people are up to, and we might do that at the end. But today, what we're going to do is look at some of the kind of significant areas around food policy and food kind of practicalities in Manchester and Greater Manchester. I'm just going to let the team introduce themselves, if that's all right. So I've said who I am. I'm going to pass on to Dennis.
Hi, I'm Dennis. I'm the Executive Director of Rob F. Kennedy Human Rights, which has the joy of working with this group of people to put on the Ripples of Hope Festival. And my son is just arriving home from nursery, so I'm about to be ruled out by a method acting T-Rex. Apologies.
Maria.
Hi, my name is Maria. I see lots of familiar faces here and also some new ones. It's great to see. I'm working together with Jude, Dennis, Rachel and Sugra on the Ripples of Hope Festival. And I'm going to hand to Rachel now, next.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Ripples of Hope, and I've been working on this community feast and trying to work out how to make it happen with all the restrictions.
And can you just explain, Rachel, for those people who don't know, your own community venue that you run with your
Oh yeah, so I run the Old Abbey Tap House, and through that I know quite a few people here who are amazing. And we're a community pub in the middle of Hume in the Science Park, and throughout lockdown we've kept going, and we've been doing community meals for people. We did a family mealtime project for families who couldn't do the eat out to help out, and that was amazing because we've got a Pirates entertainer down, and we're working a lot with Gaskell Garden Project, using surplus food to do all these projects. So for me, the feast, I think, is a really good way to show what you can do as a community with what's already available in Manchester. And I also think there needs to be some sort of celebration coming out of the lockdown for all these mutual food groups that did pop up, and a way for everyone to meet each other. And I think the feasts are an amazing way of doing that.
Great. And then Sugra Ahmed. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sugra and I work as Director of Education for Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights UK, and I have the privilege of helping to organise one of the days of the festival, which is all about education, human rights and young people, called This Is Us Day, and I work with schools.
Great. Somebody's not on mute and I can hear their radio or something, so just check you're on mute for the time being, folks. So you will have questions, I'm sure, and also, you know, maybe reports about where you're up to in your thinking, for those of you who've already sort of started embarking on the idea. But first of all, we're going to hear from 3 different people who are involved in food policy and food development in Manchester. So that, because another part of the idea of this group, which is, as I say, self-elected and like a grow bag, you know, it'll grow as many tomatoes as possible. It will keep on adding knowledge to itself. So you'll be able to support each other through the things that you learn and can tell each other. And then we'll bring in experts into the midst, so that the whole kind of idea about the community feast knowledge can be used in lots of different contexts into the future. So we're going to start by thanking Mary Ellen for joining. Mary Ellen is pretty famous at Eat Well MCR. They're a collective of top-end chefs. And you know what hard life chefs have? It's like show business and like all hours. I think, you know, I saw that the Goldman Sachs executives were kind of criticizing having 95-hour weeks, and I agree. But chefs, I think, do even more than that, from my knowledge. But Mary Ellen, at the beginning of lockdown, you started doing like cook-ups and, you know, really pivoting to think about how you could use all those skills in a different way. So I just wondered whether you could tell us really about that pivot, and also about kind of Eat Well MCR generally, and what your aims and visions for it are, which is beyond Manchester and Greater Manchester, because I know it's already a beacon for change making in food production.
Hi, thanks very much for having me. Lovely to see you all. Yes, so as Jude just said, my background is being a chef and restaurant owner, and it is long hours. I'd say it's not very much like showbiz at all, actually. It's a bit grimier, I think. But it's yeah. So until March of last year, until just before the first lockdown, I was working in and running my restaurant in Chorlton. And then about a week or so, obviously we were all sort of aware that something was looming. There was going to be, you know, the pandemic was spreading, and we knew cases were on the rise in the UK. So we kind of all had a sense, I think, that something big and awful was about to happen. So I was my eldest sister is actually a doctor. She works in palliative care in Sheffield, and she was part of the city's planning for what was going to happen when COVID did hit and how they were going to respond. And she'd had, I think, a particularly grim series of meetings one day, and I was sort of thinking that I really needed to close the restaurant. We weren't quite in lockdown, but it felt like we actually just needed to not be open to the public anymore. So I was talking to her. I was thinking about closing the restaurant. I was thinking about how much food we were going to have that was potentially going to be wasted, and then obviously thinking about the other food businesses, cafes, restaurants, all sorts in the vicinity, and then in the city, and then sort of across the country, and you know, across the world really, that were going to be suddenly closing down. And I have a bit of a background in working with food waste organisations, so I was just really conscious that there was going to be this huge amount of food waste, that there were going to be people in extraordinarily difficult situations, and I think I was just trying to work out how to join up the two dots. So I had a conversation with my sister. She'd been talking about how hard it was going to be for the staff working in the NHS to cope with what was coming, and so I just sort of said, well, what can we do? What can people like me do to help? And she said, you can feed people. You can turn up with food at the end of a shift that might have gone on, I don't know, days instead of hours, and been a really sort of grim time for the staff working in the NHS. So that was kind of how it started. It was sort of being aware that there was going to be loads of food going in the bin, and there were going to be empty restaurant kitchens, and then that conversation where it kind of became apparent that there was a sort of direct way that I could help and contribute. And so that was the first thing we did. I did a bit of a call out on social media and just asked if there were other chefs and restaurants nearby that had food they couldn't get to a food bank or wasn't suitable for passing on in that way. So food that was going to go in the bin, basically, that they didn't know what to do with. And the response was huge. And so I suddenly had a restaurant full of food. And then I sort of thought, oh well, I better find something to do with this and somewhere to put it. So the next thing was I asked if there were, again just on social media, I asked if there were chefs, restaurants, people in hospitality who had kitchen spaces going free and the time to cook. And again, the response to that was overwhelming and really positive. And then that a couple of days later, I was contacted by an organisation called Back on Track, and they're a Manchester-based charity, and they do a lot of work around food and training people and sort of helping people gain skills and stuff. And they were part of the Greater Manchester emergency food response. So the council was sort of securing hotel rooms for rough sleepers so that they were able to isolate safely. And that was a huge operation involving thousands and thousands of people. So they all of a sudden had lots and lots of people in hotels, but no food, no source of food, no catering set up. So I had a phone call saying, can you take 70 meals to a hotel nearby in the next couple of hours? And I could, because I had a restaurant full of food and a kitchen to cook in. And then it's all a bit of a blur now, but it just kind of grew from there. It snowballed very quickly from being me and some food and sort of driving around with a boot full of meals to various places to 120 people in our collective cooking out of various kitchens, not largely chefs and hospitality people, but not all, some volunteers from all walks of life. And I think it became apparent very, very quickly that the demand for what we were doing was huge, much greater than anything we'd ever be able to keep up with. So I think we decided fairly early on that yes, we were sort of addressing food waste, and yes, in certain cases we were providing emergency food, but what we were doing mostly, it's sort of, this wasn't necessarily our initial intention, but it became apparent that what we were doing was actually not providing emergency calories or not providing food that was just sort of going to fill people up. And obviously there are organisations who have been doing that brilliantly, not just during the pandemic, but in times leading up to them. But because we were in our collective of chefs and restaurant owners and hospitality people, we were cooking food and we had access to really nice ingredients. So we were cooking food that was, we felt a little bit more about addressing unequal access to decent food and providing food that was not just a meal, although that's important, but also a meal that's enjoyable, that's something you would choose, that's like a treat, that's a pick-me-up, that's a kind of yeah, I think we realized that we didn't really have the means to do the sort of big tackling hunger stuff, but we had the resources and the skills and the time and space to do something that was more about providing a bit of a moment of joy or care in someone's day. And so we were feeding, or we were taking meals to various different groups of people. We were taking meals to NHS staff until the end of August last year. And then at that point, we felt like we needed to focus on the other groups of people that we were working with, most notably families in temporary accommodation and organisations working with families and young people, which is where the bulk of our focus now lies in terms of the support work that we do. But there's now a whole other arm to Eat Well Manchester. So we exist to provide, I suppose, like a moment of care through food. That's kind of what we say we're about, and that's why we exist. But we also wanted to do something that, well, firstly, that raised enough money that we could carry on doing all the food support that we've committed to now, that we kind of secured our future, so that we were able to continue to do what we'd set out to do long into the future. And so we needed to do something that was going to raise funds. We also wanted to give something back to the chefs and businesses that had been working with us from the start, who had just given so generously of their time and their efforts. And we, you know, I mean, the way in which people responded to this sort of me asking for help was it, you know, it was mind-blowing, actually. And it was, I think there's sometimes a bit of a, I think chefs have a bit of a reputation for being a bit grumpy and having artistic temperaments, and I didn't see any of that. People were just completely humble and wanted to give up their time and wanted to cook for people and make people happy, and that was, you know, and it did. And everybody, sort of a lot of the people that were involved did sort of have said that it did make them very happy to do it. So that's great. But we also, just being aware of how, in a business sense, how much people were struggling, we wanted to do something that gave back and was a bit of a contribution to the local food economy as well. So we decided to open a marketplace. We opened properly in October last year, and we did a pilot run in July. So Eat Well Manchester is now, it's a non-profit organisation that offers support through food, but we're also now an e-commerce business, which is another new sector for us. But it's another sort of another really lovely community feel type setup to the collective. So a lot of the people that are on our marketplace and sell their produce through us are also the same people that cook for us for the support work that we do, which is really nice to kind of connect those two things up. We do things like we did, just as an example, on International Women's Day, we did a collaborative meal kit, which we sold through the marketplace. And it was 4 women chefs from across the city, each did a course. We sold that on the marketplace. Then on International Women's Day, we delivered the same meal to a women's refuge that we take food to. And I think we are sort of, there are the two sort of sides to what we do, but we're one organisation, and the food that we're selling, it's a bit of a Robin Hood situation, I suppose. We're selling not inexpensive food on the marketplace. It's funding the support work that we do, but we equally feel like access to those ingredients should be for everybody, and that's why we use the same produce and sort of provide the same meals to people that we're supporting as well as people that we're selling to. In terms of the future, I think we have ambitions to continue through the relationships we forged with lots of different organisations, and we work in conjunction with organisations. So rather than, I think, sort of being very conscious that that we don't know this sector, it's new to us, and we're chefs and restaurant owners, and there are people who are very expert in or way more expert in this arena. So we work in conjunction with organisations such as Youth Zone or Shared Health, to name a couple. And we're interested in developing projects with the organisations we work with. And we'd love to do this through a sort of school of food. So we'd like to have somewhere with a bit of a growing space and a kitchen where we can cook the support meals that we cook, and also run the marketplace from. But we mostly want to have a space where we are offering the opportunity to just experience the joy of food. So we don't mean a school as in somewhere where you'd get an MBQ or some kind of qualification. Similarly, in the way that the food that the meals that we provide are supposed to be, they're not necessarily, it's not necessarily food for survival, it's something that's a bit of an extra on top and to be enjoyed. And similarly with the sort of, we want to be a place where you can come and you can learn about growing for the enjoyment of it, or about cooking, or about eating the food. And we're also, we do work as part of a number of food waste networks, I would say. So we're in a few groups where we share food, because there's obviously lots of food donations that happen, and we can't always use 3 pallets of biscuits, for example. So we do kind of, we do try and work together to make sure that food gets somewhere and gets divvied up. But we're also really conscious that if we worked from a space of our own, we definitely have capacity to do way more in terms of taking gleaned food and being able to produce that into meals or into things to sell in the marketplace. So that's kind of where our minds are in terms of the future. I've probably forgotten lots, but
it's an incredible story. It's an incredible story, like for you personally, and presumably all the other people that you're working with across the network, because you know all the values that you obviously already had, but you've pushed all those values straight out into the frontier and kind of gone, right, we are going to operate those values now. And of course that builds this like incredible creative entrepreneurial sense of, we must do this, and now here's another opportunity, we must do that. So the lightning speed of it all, has it excited you? Has it made you feel as if there's a whole kind of new world out there that you wouldn't have thought of? You know, we didn't want COVID to happen, but the opportunities that it's given to change the way we have conversations between ourselves and the community, it seems to have done that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's opened up a whole new world. I think that part of the reason it happened and grew so quickly is because I think it's a little bit in the nature of people that work in hospitality to be very reactive, responsive, to pivot quickly. I mean, that's our whole working lives, is just dealing with one disaster after another. I mean, that's just kind of working a shift. It's always sort of semi-controlled chaos. So I think, I mean, obviously I was already conscious of food waste. I was already conscious of wanting to help, but I think there is something in hospitality people where thinking on your feet and changing things and doing things quickly is kind of like in your nature. I think also we just really need to feed people. I mean, it's kind of, that's something that I think is, you know, I think none of us could sit still for 5 minutes, basically. But in terms of kind of, there's a couple of things really on that. Like in terms of the community of cooks, chefs, restaurateurs in the city, that is now a very different thing than it was 12 months ago. And the amount of collaboration and just conversation and actually friendliness and warmth and sense of us being in a thing together has totally transformed in the last 12 months. But the other thing is that I also now definitely feel way much part of the wider community, because restaurants, because you spend so much time there and you tend to spend more time with the few people you work with than you do with your family or your friends or anybody else. It's like a tiny little universe, and it can just be a little bit a world of its own. And so not only do I feel more connected to the other restaurants and businesses in the city, and have made just, you know, really happy to have those friendships and relationships now. But also for me, and again, this is something that a lot of people who've been part of Eat Well have said, that just that connection to the world around us is something that I really value now, and I know that that's something that people that have been involved have said too.
So listen, I'm going to see whether anybody in the wider Zoom wants to ask any questions, because again, I keep stressing that part of this idea of convening us as a group of people who are interested in community feasts is for us to extend our knowledge about food, about the politics of food, about the respect and idea of equality that needs to go around food production, food knowledge, etc. So anybody got anything that they would like to ask at this point? Just unmute and go for it. Nope. No, is that a no? Nobody, not yet. Okay, so can I ask Marianne that then, in terms of when you heard about the kind of community feasting project, what's your sense of how we could connect with your work? What's your sort of feeling about that at the moment?
There's a couple of things. There's, I suppose, in terms of securing supplies, there are connections that I have and we have as Eat Well with suppliers who might be able to donate produce or just that produce can be purchased from. There are some growers that we work with also who might be keen to be involved, and I think I saw it on the website earlier, but this is a brilliant time of year to be planting stuff to be eating in September, and that's what a lot of the growers are doing now. So I think it would be interesting to approach growers and with maybe some of the individual groups who are going to be leading their feasts, and seeing if something can be done there where it's grown together, harvested together, and then used for the feast. And that could be really interesting. The other thing is, in terms of our collective, it's mostly chefs, and so if we're talking about people who don't necessarily have a background in cooking or cooking for large numbers, there's a whole wealth of expertise there. So it might be that individual chefs from the collective would partner up with groups and be able just to help out in terms of prep, you know, like in planning the prep, not necessarily cooking, although they might. I don't speak for anyone, but in terms of how to plan it out and how to prepare for the right numbers and those kinds of things. So I'd say practical advice is something we have as a resource, and equally the marketplace suppliers. It's definitely worth us speaking to the people that supply the marketplace and see how they would feel about being involved, whether again is it in terms of guidance or in terms of providing some produce.
Great. So, you know, an imperative for anybody who wants to be part of this community feasting project is that you have to have more courage than knowledge, right? You know, that's just a general piece of advice for life anyway. Like, you don't need
cooking, sure.
Hey, yeah, you don't need to know how to do something. You just have to start off by wanting to do something, because once you want to do it, once you give yourself permission to want to do something, you will find out how to do it. Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. So so an example is, if you're thinking, I'd love to do a feast with my community, you might be thinking, well, either I want them all to have the joy of doing their own cooking because of their own, you know, excitement about providing food and bringing food, in which case that might be a kind of a combination, a bit like a sort of, you know, massive smorgasbord picnic that everybody's bringing something together. And there might be one central thing that is being provided, say like bread or rice or something, and everybody else is supplying, but then they need the do they need expertise, more expertise? Do they want more recipes? Do they want to do a massive giant cooking project together? You know what I mean? So it's like imagining what your feast is, or do you think that what you want to do is bring a whole pile of people together? I mean, we talked, for example, about, I think it was Oxford Road, were thinking they would just bring everybody together from a hospital that they wanted to sort of make connection with and provide the food, in which case that might be, how do you find the suppliers and talk to the growers now and get all the ingredients for a beautiful feast? So lots of different things. Nadeem, what's your thoughts? Question.
Just want to ask one question and share a thought or maybe a feeling. The first the feeling part, and I want to put it out because I think it's better to say it rather than just keep it in myself. I mean, this is the second meeting I'm attending in this on this about this event.
Yeah.
And I still, in my mind, I'm not really clear about the whole event, like what is going on. I know bits and pieces which I've picked up during conversations, but maybe not here, but maybe separate. If someone from you guys can be in, we can be in touch and explain to me what the big project is. That's where I am, and I need help in that regard to be clear in my mind. Now, the other thing is that in the community that I represent, we are quite used to and self-sufficient in cooking food and catering for 400 people, for example. That's a regular thing that pre-COVID we used to do at least a few times a year. My question is that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, we have our people, we just hold an event and then say, in the end, in the message we say, and food will be served, and they just come, attend the event and eat food. We do that regularly. I would prefer to have a different audience or have different guests, like people from outside the community. And that's where my concern is, that we are happy to cook, serve, and feed our guests, but can somebody help us to get those guests in rather than my usual eaters?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, yes, Rachel and Maria will be in touch with you, or anybody else in the group at this point who now kind of wants to go, look, I've got a particular idea for a feast, or this is what I want to do. Help me grow this seed of an idea. We will do that individually with you, because each one will be bespoke. And secondly, the idea is either to have a venue where other people can bring their community, or you have a community that you particularly want to gather, and how does that happen? Or, as you've just said, you actually have a community, but that community would like to reach out to people who you don't know, and what does that look like, and who are those people? All of those things are what we're trying to do with the community feasting, which is, extend hospitality across bridges, cross divides, make new connections, and hold different conversations. That's really the purpose of the community feasting, and we know that people do that over food. And what we're talking about in this meeting is the different kinds of elements that Manchester in particular has been exploring during this period of lockdown and need to make the access to food and the kind of networks around food a very, very amazing thing, which it is. And we're just sort of giving you that information tonight. But the individual feasting choices, as in, I'm going to do mine in my library, I'm going to do mine in my school, I'm going to do mine in my synagogue, I'm going to do mine in the street, I have a synagogue but no community, whatever. These are the things that Rachel and Maria will pick up with people individually. And then these group meetings are really to kind of provide new information and new knowledge. Is that okay? Yep. And with that in mind, Rachel, you've got a few bits of information to give as well, haven't you?
Yeah, sorry. It's just been a very evolving project because of lockdown restrictions and the way it's kind of grown. And quite a few new people have joined as well with venues. And it's like Maria said, I'm trying to create a database. So we're just moving into that stage where I can create this database of community groups and venues, and we can start matching you. But in a way, it's a tiny bit too early to start organising the feast, but it's the right time of year to start growing. And what I've been trying to do with all the research and work I've done for about 1.5 years now around the food sustainability and how we can make feasts happen at a community level is to go out and do all this research into what's happening. And what we found is there's a lot of amazing sustainability groups such as Gaskell Garden Project or Sow the City who do amazing workshops, but they would like to access new communities. And at the same time, there's all these community groups who would like to be more involved with those activities and don't know about it. So what I'm trying to do in the workshops is try and network you up a bit more to understand what's going on in the area and ways you could access different forms of food in this workshop.
I'm just going to pick up that phrase, semi-controlled chaos. I think that's a reasonable description. Mary Ellen, you gave that for yourselves, and I think that's still where we are. We're growing this community of you, and we are feeding more information as we understand it. It will evolve into probably, I would say, between 10 and 15 community feasts.
And the range of people's abilities is very different. So it goes from you, Nadeem, who can easily put on a feast with your eyes closed, to other people who are more comfortable in making the food, but not having it no real access to communities. So I'm a bit overwhelmed by this, but I think it's such an amazing opportunity because over the last year since lockdown, everyone's come together to all these food networks, and it's all mutual food groups and people like you in this conversation. One of my worries is come September, a lot of the funding for that dries up. And there is ways that we could keep it going because there's the access to the food, there's access to the kitchen, but also there's a real want by people to meet up with their neighbours and get to know people in their community because of what's happened in lockdown. So I think the feasts are an amazing opportunity in September to do that as part of the Ripples of Hope Festival, but also in the hope that it'll help people form new bonds with their community and keep this going afterwards.
Are there any other questions to Mary Ellen in particular? There's quite a few. Congratulations, Mary Ellen, for being so brilliant, which is true. And it is very exciting to think of that transformation. And for me, a very important ingredient is, excuse the pun, is that stress and the fact, of course, you can give people basic food, but is that all people deserve? And the idea that actually, why not give people something that will give them some joy and something different and a treat? We had a conversation in, I think, the first meeting where people talked about the problems of food banks. Food banks are, of course, phenomenal resources, but they don't necessarily yet have the detail needed for the different kinds of cultural needs, the different kinds of requirements. And when people sort of go around Asda or Morrison's and put stuff in the food bank, there's only so much pasta people can eat. I mean, the specificity is something that we're all still trying to work out, which is a kind of an issue of knowledge and respect as well. Just my final question, Mary Ellen, is, could you imagine resuming your previous life, or is that different now? Is it all different now?
Well, it sort of coexists. So we reopened the creameries in September last year, and then obviously closed again at the end of October, beginning of November. But no, eat well is what I do mostly now, and I don't cook at the creameries anymore. I just kind of I'm kind of helping run it, but I'm not doing the day-to-day. So it is, yeah, I mean, a year ago I was cooking there every day. My job was to be the head chef there. So it's not going to go back to how it was, and I don't want it to. I like this new job.
Okay, so what Mary Ellen is saying to everybody here is that there is a vast community of chefs available to do workshops for your community, or just to come and talk to you personally, maybe about, how you could dream up your feast in terms of food. They can connect you to buying power that allows things to be bought in a very different way. and we're going to hear about growers in a minute, but there's also a kind of whole range of growers that could actually, at this point in time, if they knew what it was, could go, yes, well, if your feasts are all about radishes, we can just grow radishes for you. I mean, I'm not suggesting that doesn't sound like a very nice feast, but do you know what I mean? Rachel, any other things you wanted to bring to our attention at this point?
So we've had some good news with FareShare coming on board as a partner, and FareShare distribute surplus food, like really amazing food that's perfectly good. And normally they supply food banks and groups like my Mutual Aid Food Group and Cracking Good Food and Well Manchester. But it also gives you an idea about how much food is wasted, perfectly good food is wasted and is going straight into the bin. And I was shocked because we went to this, there's a guy who's got loads of freezers. He's a chef and he's been saving high-end meat that was going straight from the factories into landfill. So I think it'll give communities a good idea what's going on with the food system. I don't think people have realised the impact of Brexit on food prices yet as well. So understanding your local food network and alternative food network and activities like growing is really important in the next few years.
Okay, so FareShare coming on board, what could that mean for everybody in this room?
That's potential of maybe being delivered the food to make your feast as well.
Okay, so
as well, wasn't there?
Sorry,
there was someone else recently too.
So we've also, I think we may have somebody from Kindling Trust with.
Yeah, we have got
conversation with Kindling Trust. Yeah, and we've been beginning talking with the Kindling Trust about some grafted fruit heritage trees that we might be able to share, which would be amazing. So that's something that kind of watch this space. I think with FareShare, we're picking up the conversations with them in a couple of weeks, and it may be that it's food that needs to be collected from where they're based, but they're really excited about the feasting, and they've come on board as a partner with us, which is wonderful. And I'm sure there'll be more, but we're really excited by those two things that we can share with you today.
Yeah, so bit by bit, as a kind of toolkit and resource, we hope to end up with ways that you can source the food, ways you can help grow the food, or communities that we bring access to the venues that you run, but don't necessarily have the community development program in place for. So it'll be a whole range of things that we're building over time. So I'm going to, thanks Marianne, and thank you so much for joining us. Please stay if you can, but I'm going to come to Jon at Sow the City. So Jon works on a range of projects from Men's Shed to Sow the City. It's all about hands-on engagement with food and skills. Jon, are you there?
Certainly am.
Can you?
Hello.
Hiya. Sow the City, such a great name. Do you want to just tell us again what's been happening for you in this COVID period and where you've got to with your sense of us and food?
Yeah, I've actually got a PowerPoint, so I'm going to go through that. Yeah, I mean, it's been great hearing from everybody, and I'm getting excited, particularly hearing about these chefs that we've got on board now. It's just getting towards dinner time, and I'm just thinking, brilliant. I've definitely got my appetite worked up, ready for this feast. So yeah, I mean, my part of the puzzle, I guess, is around the growing part of this. And yeah, I mean, I'll go through a PowerPoint if that's okay. It's a little bit of a different thing, but yeah, we're also I'm going to kind of cover some of how we can help with the feast, probably less so what we did during COVID. I might cover that a little bit.
Fine. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Just one sec. Great. So yeah, I was just going to talk through a little bit about us. There's some familiar faces on this Zoom, so I think some of you know about Sow the City, but there's quite a few new people as well. What we do at Sow the City, why we do it, and also how to get involved. I was just thinking that there are so many, just from so far listening to you, there's all sorts of synergies there that we can kind of work with, and ways that we can work together already, I think. So we're a social enterprise. We're based in Manchester. We've been running since 2009. We work with about 150 different community food growing groups, and they range really from people growing food in a sort of alleyway, just a few neighbours, all the way up to you know, kind of market gardens and bigger spaces. And it's a whole variety of different types of people. So we have groups that we've helped set up, like there's a Bangladeshi Women's Association they grow vegetables. I've no idea what they're even called. They use those for the cafe there in Longsight. But there's all sorts of other groups as well. We work in hospitals, GP surgeries, schools. All sorts of different people are actually really interested in growing their own food. Over the years, we've converted a lot of land that was, you know, kind of derelict, unused land into useful community green space. And we've taught about 7,000 people or so through various workshops that we've run. The main one is growing fruit and vegetables, but we run all sorts of other ones around things as esoteric as, you know, keeping chickens or, you know, composting, those sorts of things. So there's a team of 4 of us. There's all sorts of volunteers as well, as you might imagine. We've got hundreds of volunteers that we're working with every year. And then we have various specialists that help us with certain projects. So yeah, we're doing loads of workshops. We do a kind of landscape design and build. So a classic project for us is that a council or a housing association or a group of residents get in touch and they say, we've got a bit of land and actually we would like to grow some fruit and veg on it, or make it into useful amenity space for our community. And what we do is we take them through the whole process. Really, we help them design the space. So we do a kind of co-design thing. We pretty much always build the garden with the local community as well, plant the garden with the local community to empower them and show them how to do it themselves. They enjoy it a lot more that way as well. And then we run all sorts of sessions kind of showing them you know, how to use that space, help with funding applications, for example, so that they can get up and running, help with things like governance and, you know, boring things like health and safety and stuff so that they can keep running. So yeah, we try and give that kind of wraparound support for groups. And we do bits of other things as well. We used to do events, so we've stopped doing those for a while, but hopefully we'll be doing one in September with you guys. So there's a few reasons why we do this. You know, one of the main ones is health, and we think that growing outdoors is a hugely therapeutic activity. And in fact, around half of the funding that we get now is through the NHS in some form or other. So we're commissioned to provide services for specific groups often, so people recovering from drug and alcohol addiction, for example, you know, mental health. So yeah, we run a kind of whole load of programs. I'm going to talk about one of them at the end of this presentation as well that we've just started working on. So this guy is up in Bury, a centre called Red Door. They had a little yard really at the back of their centre. It's run by Caritas, if you know them. And he was homeless. You know, we built the garden for a few £1,000s probably with volunteers, not really so much money. We got a little bit of grant funding, I think, for that one from the local authority in Bury. And then, as you can see, you know, you can produce a huge amount of veg actually in quite a small space. And this guy really is benefiting massively from that activity. Yeah. Okay. Second one, climate change. Don't know if anyone's heard of that. So we think food growing, particularly in the community setting, is just a really good way for that people can do something about climate change. I think one of the pains that you have is trying to figure out what you can actually do to help sometimes, and that's a really awful feeling. But growing your own food, food accounts for about 1/3 in this graph here, we've got about a quarter, but if you factor in transport, it's about a third of a sort of average person's carbon footprint. So actually, it's a really obvious thing to kind of have a go at. Sure, try to fly less or don't fly at all, but food growing is something that everybody can do, and that can really make a big difference to your carbon footprint. And I've got a graph here. This is from Booth's supermarket, and just shows you different types of vegetables and what the kilograms of CO2, so the impact of in terms of the carbon footprint of that product is per kilogram of product. So you can see there, potatoes, it's about 500 grams of CO2 for a kilogram of product. But if you get some, for example, asparagus through from Peru or somewhere, you know, that could be up to 8 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. And that's equivalent to, it's about 80 kilometers of driving. I think that's an interesting comparison. So you know, that's just for 1 kilogram of asparagus. So yeah, it quickly mounts up to, you know, you could end up, a weekly shop could be a drive to Italy or something like that. You know, it really does add up, and food does have a massive impact in terms of your carbon footprint. And what we're really saying, and hopefully you understand, is that actually, if you grow your own, you can potentially get it down to 0. But actually, if you grow your own apples, for example, well, that's a tree. You know, that sequesters carbon. A tree, on average, takes 1 ton of CO2 out of the atmosphere during its lifetime, and it provides you with apples during that period as well. So yeah, it just shows that you can, you know, what the power of this kind of activity is really in terms of climate change. And I've also got a graph here, you know, with meat. So beef is particularly high. A kilogram of beef, you know, if it's from, this is probably UK grown or reared beef, but if it's from Brazil, it can be up to about 60 kilograms per kilogram of product. So that's, you know, that's a huge amount, and what well, 6 times what the asparagus figure was. So, you know, meat really is a much bigger polluter in terms of carbon footprint of food. Lamb's pretty similar, chicken's a bit lower, fish is fairly low as well. But yeah, there's lots more information online about that sort of stuff. So the other thing is about the sort of green infrastructure of Manchester. We think it's pretty awful, actually, particularly in the city centre. Bit grotty. You can see there on that map that those, you know, the middle of that's the city centre there, isn't it? Well, there's hardly anything, is there? Manchester's the 8th greenest city in the UK, but that looks at the whole of the local authority area. I think if you look at the city centre, I can't imagine that it's even 8th place in terms of you know, how green it is, and you know, we think that we can help with that with the projects that we're setting up. So I'm just going to finish on a few ways that you can get involved with Sow the City. So one thing is that we run this map. It's through Sustain, the Alliance for Better Food and Farming, who are based in London, and for them, they very kindly give us use of this map for free in Manchester called the Good to Grow map. The map has got all sorts of community gardens on it. You can go onto the map, you can scroll around, not on this version on my PowerPoint, but you can find a project that's near you. You can click on that project, you can put your email in, and that will email through to the person who is running that project. You can also find out about when that project's open, and there's some clever bits to this system as well. If you want to set up your own project as well, you can put that onto the map. And if you have your own project, you can use something called a Harvestometer, which is a system that's built into it, which means that you can see how much money you've saved by what you've grown. So you basically enter in what you've grown, and it's linked to supermarket prices, and it tells you how much money you're saving by doing that. So yeah, I mean, in terms of you know, COVID, I've not really talked about that, but a lot of these gardens were providing surplus food to, you know, as part of the emergency food relief through COVID. And you know, these projects mainly are providing food for the people that go to those projects. It's not like we're trying to kind of supply the whole of Manchester particularly, but there are gluts. They tend to be around September actually, and so you will find that without, you know, needing to plan this very much, you will end up with produce. That is a time when there is just gluts of stuff actually, and hopefully we could sort of redirect that towards some of the feats, and I've spoke to Rachel about that, I think. We do run a volunteer program as well, so if you want to get involved volunteering with us at community gardens, they can just go straight to the community gardens. They also, a lot of them have volunteering programs, but if you do want to help with us, then get in touch, and you can get involved with growing stuff with us. And just because it's quite new for us, I just thought I'd mention this. So we are we've just been commissioned, I suppose, to provide a green prescribing service for Manchester. So it's not Greater Manchester, although there are other green prescribing. So Lancashire Wildlife are running one, for example, in Bury. So there's quite a lot going on suddenly. It's part of the green recovery, and the government sort of putting money into nature-based solutions. And so it is possible now to, well, in 1 month's time, when we start this project, it will be possible to refer people to us, self-refer. You know, doctors will be referring people to us, and then we're referring those on to run and also running sessions at these community projects, you know, by trained members of staff, so that people can, you know, hopefully recover, which, as people have pointed out, is more important than ever, you know, this summer and this year. So that is it from me.
That's great, John. And again, in the chat, you know, people are really enjoying the presentation, and also just the, you know, the fact that it's happening, and it's obviously doing such good. And I feel as if the language around social prescribing has accelerated a lot during COVID, which is fantastic. And also, you know, since we have been braver about being open about mental health, that actually the kind of the role of food and light and nature and all of those things coming together no longer feels like a kind of you know, a niche idea. So there's so much about this that is really good. Again, questions from anybody or comments from anybody in the room? I can't see everybody's hands necessarily easily. So anybody want to add anything in or say anything, ask a question?
Somebody asked about how much energy we need for cooking different foods, which I think was related to probably the carbon footprint thing that I was talking about. Yeah. So those figures don't include cooking. And I mean, we've been working on this food wave project actually with Rachel recently, and Robin's here as well, I think. So yeah, but yeah, I think we did some sort of carbon footprinting with that group, and things like tea's actually got quite a low carbon footprint until you cook it, and then it's actually quite high because of the cooking, and obviously you need to use hot water to make tea. So I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah, those figures didn't include cooking, and cooking is a really significant issue. Conjuro, yeah.
Yeah, then there is obviously the raw food movement, which is a thing in itself. We could come back to that maybe another time. But I think, again, John's offering basically first lots of different things to this group and this growing group. First of all, you know, if you want to immerse yourself in more food education, then you can, you know, you can do it through volunteering. You can just do it through sort of going along and finding out more about it. If your community might want to start thinking of becoming a community garden, I don't know, everybody will have different, you know, places that they belong to. If you're a school or a library and want to do this even as a weekend project at some point. So we're trying to plug you in to a whole range of things that might be of use to you at some stage, or might change the way that you do things. We want you to be creative about the, you know, the feast. I mean, if you end up saying, well, my feast is that everybody's going to bring Rice Krispies and we're all just going to sit down and talk about where milk comes from, then, you know, we'll support that. But you might also want to really like work with the community that you want to build on their understanding of food as well. So there's lots of ways of thinking about this. John, were you always a foodie person? I mean, was this your life from when you were 18?
I've got an environmental background, actually, you know, well, I've done a few different things, but I guess if we're talking about my career now, then yeah, I mean, I was always kind of environmentally minded from a young age, and you know, I saw the, you know, it's like, I set up Sow the City myself. It was a while ago. I had a bit of time to do it. I got a small grant from Unlimited, if you know them. So it was £2,000, and I bought some compost and some seeds, and really it all kind of came from that. And I set it up as an environmental project, because I just realised that all the things that I said before, Manchester, I just thought it just needs to improve. I thought environmentally, and also I just realised how important food was in terms of sustainability generally as well. So
yeah. So I mean, another part of this project, folks, is that, you know, you would not all be here for 2 hours or more on a whatever night it is, Wednesday, if you weren't all committed to trying to do something. I mean, that's why you're all here. And one of the things that Mary Ellen is kind of a tribute to her and to John is that when you have an idea, you know, have the courage to go a bit further with it, because it will change your life. You won't be able to control it very easily necessarily, but it's something that you can, you know, you just have to begin, really, which you all are because you're here. But what I think is exciting, but it's not just particular to Manchester, but Manchester's doing it exceptionally well, is like building this commitment to food and food networks and the education around food. And that will make a massive difference to the next generation, I think, in terms of how people talk about these things. So are you very plugged in to new networks now, John? I mean, is that one of the effects that the partnerships kind of keep building?
One of the effects of COVID, or of
yeah. Well, of COVID accelerating the language around social justice for a start, and also the ways that communities deserve to be helped and self-help.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's I think Manchester's actually got quite a long way to go. I think there's loads of grassroots sustainable food work going on, but actually I think there's quite a long way to go at the kind of policy level, really, with food. So that would be one thing I'd say. But the other thing is that you're right, everything is shifting at an incredible rate as well. And there's a lot of opportunity right now. In, you know, people are thinking outside of the box, aren't they? So it is possible to make changes, and, you know, there are changes happening with food policy as well right now. So it's a good time to just feed into that process if you can.
And then going back to actual food, you're saying that not only could we now be thinking of like commissioning food being grown as in our radish feast, but also by the time you get to September, there will be gluts in stuff which you can't necessarily predict at this point, but if it suddenly ended up being we could make like 177 apple pies for your feast because there was lots of apples or whatever, that's the kind of creativity we can muster once the glut shows up in particular ingredients. Am I right in that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, growing it's perfect, the timing that you've got for it. I mean, but I think also foraging as well. You know, you could do quite well with that, and that might be a good kind of aspect to sort of bring into it as well.
Okay, foraging.
Can I just say, sorry, hi, I'm Gemma and I'm from Cracking Good Food, and we're a community interest company who our sort of original inception pre-COVID. We were teaching skills, cooking skills and sustainability knowledge amongst various communities, which has been subsidised by our cookery school. But since COVID, we've been doing emergency food provision in the form of really sort of healthy, nutritious, ready meals, which are taken sort of distributed by about 25 different community groups around Greater Manchester. But talking of foraging, we actually run foraging expeditions around Manchester, and that's something that we could, you know, perhaps that's a way in which we could perhaps be involved, as well as the other more obvious ways of providing support we have a course that kind of teaches people all the skills and knowledge they need to set up their own community kitchens and to run them safely as well. So that would be a way in which we could be involved.
Could you just talk a bit more about that, the setting up of community kitchens? I think that will be of real interest to a lot of people in the call.
Sure. So one of the things that we've found since starting this emergency food provision has been, well, we've just had to set up a lot of kitchens in you know, buildings in various states of repair, get them into a safe working environment, go through all the procedures you need to go through, registering them, and making sure that the cooks and volunteers have the appropriate training. We provide basic food hygiene training as well. So the course that we run is called Cook Bank, and it encourages people and gives them the skills to set up their own cooking clubs as well, and to operate these. And since COVID, it's become obvious that these groups are incredibly useful and totally needed within communities, and it's something that I think being done locally is really important to feed the needs of and requirements culturally, and just making sure it's an appropriate service for the community and people, you know, looking after each other in the local neighbourhood, basically. So we want to be able to set people up with those skills and sort of ignite that passion to do that, and then kind of leave them to it, really, and then offer ongoing support, of course, but it's the initial provision of the skills and knowledge that we specialise in.
I mean, that's a fantastic offer. So again, folks, if you can just sort of visualize this in your head, you know, all the different ways that you could yourself train up in different routes of this. I mean, some of you are already very experienced, but you could add more knowledge in through the connection to these different groups, or you can bring members of your community to start developing different kinds of skills and knowledges. You can build a kitchen in a particular part of your neighborhood or your community. But we will keep on adding into this sort of like tool bank, so that and then Rachel and Maria and others will sort of will be like gradually working with you about like how you're going to sculpt your own event, or if you're in partnership, what might that look like. Nadeem, is that you? Are you wanting to come in? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. A question for Jon. Your presentation, I really enjoyed it. Something very close to my heart, and I aspire to do. I haven't done anything. So the question is, you did talk about like communal areas where a group of, for example, neighbors get together and they have a plot of land. You can go in and help. Would you do the same for an individual who has a back garden, for example, where there's not a big group, but that individual is ready to open up their garden for the benefit of community, but in their own garden. And that might inspire others to join in.
Yeah, we've not done so much with individual households, but we do run. I mean, the quick answer is it depends on where you live, actually, because we're like a business to business, a B2B business. So we tend to kind of work for a housing association, and they say, "Can you work in this neighbourhood?" And then we're able to sort of provide the support that you need. So yeah, I mean, I won't ask you where you live and get you your address right now, but yeah, I think maybe if you got in touch, there might be something that we could help through one of the programs that we're running already. I think that when we have worked in, you know, what we believe is that even if you've got a windowsill, you know, a backyard, you know, a small garden, or as you say, even using somebody else's garden or sharing your space, you know, all of those spaces can be suitable for growing food. So I think that's a really good idea about offering that up to people in the community. Yeah, because there's plenty of people, particularly towards the city centre, that don't have anywhere to grow, and all the allotments now are pretty much, you know, we know the allotments, you know, managers and things, and you know, they're pretty much booked up. So I mean, we tend to send people towards community gardens because there's somewhere that you can go and learn as well, because there's a community aspect there already, so you can go and chat to you know, people, learn how to do it maybe before, if you've not done it before. You know, there's a little bit of complexity to it, and there's quite a lot to learn. So we recommend that as a good way forward. But you could email me, and maybe we've got something in your area that we're doing as well.
Okay. Now
the chat, so I can take it off there.
All right. Before we go to Dan, who's going to talk to us about the Gaskell Garden project, we've been on the call for an hour and a quarter. You might want to go to the loo or get a cup of tea. So can we take a 5-minute break to do both of those things, or neither? You can just meditate, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. Okay. Dennis, are you there? Hi. Dennis, I was wondering, just before we bring Dan in, we've talked a few times about the toolkit, and that we're going to generate this toolkit for you all, which then allows you to start also responding to us in terms of, but what about this and what do I do about that? So it becomes a kind of call and response thing. Dennis, when do you, I know that you're designing it at the moment. What's your timetable, do you think?
So imagine in the next week or two, we'll have a draft that we'll be able to share.
So would you say just after Easter?
Yeah, I think that's a good aim.
Okay, so we expect something in your inboxes with regards to a toolkit just after Easter. And then we'll be able to get into the sort of nitty gritty. What are you planning, or what would you like to plan? Okay, so I think we're all back. Thanks for being so patient, Dan. You know, last on the bill, top of the bill, hey. So
no, Alana is at Maxine's. I don't know.
Who's on mute? Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Dan from the Gaskell Garden Project, it's a grassroots group that works around surplus food. They have the allotment in Plattfield Gardens, as well as the regular pay-as-you-feel meals at the old Abbey Tap House, which Rachel referred to earlier. And they've delivered hundreds of different projects all during this lockdown period. So it must have been pretty amazing, Dan. But you've got a presentation or two, I think, to give us, haven't you? So over to you.
We do. We do. Thank you, Jude. Hello, everybody. First of all, just want to say a big thank you for everyone to be here. It's so wonderful to be with you all. Oh, thank you. We're going to do very ambitiously a 5-way presentation. So I'm one director out of 6 of the Gaskell Garden Project. We're a community interest company based in South Manchester. Also here today, we have Izzy, we have Nathan, we have Millie, we have Robin. I think I might have seen T-Rob is another one of our directors. We're a big collective of people. There's actually about 70 of us in total, with a core group of about 15 board members that make our decisions collectively. So we'll kind of give you like a bit of an idea of who we are and what we do. So we are the Gaskell Garden Project, or GGP as our acronym. Traditionally, 6 years ago, we started out as a very small kind of allotment project that was based around traditionally working with people seeking refuge. And what we kind of were is the idea that people seeking refuge were a very transient community in Manchester with no kind of stationary kind of community to connect to. But also for us guys, for the UK citizens, we were the same. We were transient people as well, just come back into the city. We had no sense of purpose. There was no employment opportunities for us at the time. So we basically just started digging bits of soil. We didn't really know why. We just kept on digging it. It just felt good. Then more and more people started doing it. And what we do, I'm going to give like a bit of a context. Then the rest of the team are going to talk about the different areas that they work in within the project itself. But essentially, we are a permaculture project. And permaculture, to anyone who knows or does not know, is known as a gardening technique, but also a philosophy of life. So when I say permaculture, we are growers, we produce food. But what we do is we celebrate any activity that makes us take responsibility for our own existence. So that means that we encompass everything, anything that gives you a sense of purpose in life. We use the garden space as a platform for this exchange to happen. Like I say, in the beginning, it was mostly focused on UK citizens working alongside non-UK citizens. And the kind of concept behind that to us is that my other background is I'm actually an immigration solicitor. And we're really struggling to get win asylum cases of people here in Manchester. The Home Office penalised them for saying they weren't integrating into the community properly or well enough or hard enough or compassionately enough, or whatever term you want to use. But we believe that game was rigged because there was it's an incredibly difficult thing for a transient community, especially people come from trauma, stress, don't speak language. All incredible. Any kind of these barriers feel to integrate. So we thought, well, let's open up the space. So that was kind of 6 years ago. Now kind of 6 years on, we are based in Plattfield's Market Garden, which many people may possibly know. We're hopefully about to open back up again to the public on the 15th of April, so please do pop down. You can buy vegetables, little bits, but also you can come and see our permaculture display garden and take place in workshops activities anyway. We have different elements of the project because, like I say, permaculture, we take a holistic approach to what we do. So just growing the food and just distributing the food isn't quite good enough for us. What we want is a full span of the process. So we want people will grow with us, but see the process all the way through. And that goes all the way to harvesting the food, cooking the food, eating the food. And if we had compost toilets, we'd like people to put that back into the soil again, but we're not quite there yet. We'll go to the next slide. Got my tech hand over in Withington. Thank you very much. So very briefly, we operate around 3 main principles, and that is earth care, people care, and fair share. Earth care is kind of straightforward in a way, but I mean, in this kind of time, we're seeing, you know, we say there's only about 60 years left of fertilities in the soil and the farms here in the UK. We've just left Europe, so we've cut off a lot of food ties going through. It can be more important time for conservation. So in terms of meeting community needs, in terms of getting people cheaper food, faster food, more housing, nature and conservation tends to be at the tough end of that. So that's a principle that we kind of keep in mind in everything that we're doing. Are we incorporating nature into everything we do? It's a nature-centered approach rather than a human-centered approach to activities that we do. The people care and fair share principles, really what I mean by that is equal access to resource. And when I say resource, I'm not just talking about food. I'm talking about intangible resource too. Love, emotion, connection, opportunity, purpose. These are all resources to us as well. So with that, I'm kind of going to hand that over because that was kind of like the process for the past couple of years. With COVID hitting last year, we've switched up everything that we do too, and we have a wonderful team of people that are very dedicated in doing so, who are going to speak about the other aspects now. So I think I'm passing over to Robin.
Hello, yes, next slide please is. So during lockdown, we really transformed our purpose and our approach to a lot of things. We performed like emergency food distribution for our surplus project. We will go into a little bit more detail about what our surplus project is about, but we create conversations with big supermarkets and connect them with local other organizations and individuals and local residents in the community to distribute still very high quality food that's being thrown away by supermarkets. And we're moving tons of this stuff. Like we've been kind of loosely monitoring how much it's gone through, but yeah, it's mass amounts. We collaborated with Old Abbey Tap House, so like we drew on our like amazing relationship with Rach in that space. We had that before with our Pay As You Feel cafe that was hosted there twice a month, but especially during lockdown, we stored food there. We've organised food distributions from the tap house, and we collaborated with Rach and Manchester Youth's Got Talent and other amazing organisations on Christmas to get hampers out to the community. And yeah, averaging since coming up to a year now, we've been reaching 870 people a week with the food that we've been distributing to people. So it's quite amazing outreach. Our community garden as well, based in Platfields, has still been active. A lot of our volunteers, again, social isolation being a thing that a lot of people were facing, unemployment for a lot of our volunteers as well, and connecting some of the student population with actually being a bit socially responsible slightly with our efforts and our energy and how we engage with our community has been really, really important. So our garden has been provided a real big, it's meant a lot to a lot of people over this period of time, for sure. Our gleaning was still very active as well. So this is where we go, and we partnership with Platfields Market Garden, the Northwest Gleaning Hub, to go to farms on the outskirts of Manchester and take volunteers with us and glean the veg. We have worked briefly with Bread and Butter as well. We kind of like filled up a whole van of food and just kind of sent it out with them, as well as taking it out into the community and cooking with it for our volunteers, which is something that we still would love to continue to do, as well as involving other partnership organisations on gleans outward. And yeah, we've got Easter coming up as well, so we're going to have lots and lots of Easter eggs and bunnies accompanying to try and deliver all of these eggs around to the wider community. So if anybody needs some eggs and chocolate over this time, then please do give us a shout, because we will have an abundance of chocolate eggs over this time. But what was really, really seen over this lockdown was, again, as like the amazing other presentations here tonight, is like the necessity of this in community, and how when all else paused, how useful and relevant it was for us to empower people, empower each other around access to food. So yeah, next slide please. So yeah, going forward, from COVID, it really has shifted a lot of things for us, but we definitely want to take up things that we were doing before lockdown. That being our regular pay-as-you-feel cafe events that we held at Tap House, and continue to do more events and festivals supporting local artists and supplying food from our surplusings, very similar to these feasts as well. Like that ethos is definitely within our events and our festivals. Something very exciting that we have approaching us is a new site in Hume, which is a strip road of about 500 metres of unused land, currently in the domain of like the council and the highway. But we've been in communications with Patrick from the council, as well as other people, other kind of ward like liaisons in Manchester, about this unused site that's kind of used as a shortcut by the local community and a bike path, which we still want to make it. So we go into more detail about the new site a little bit later on. And one of our other aspects is greening the city, which entails a lot of different things. And this is in partnership. I did, alongside Rach, go on the Sow the City course with Jon, which was really insightful, and definitely loads of collaborations we want to do with them for guerrilla gardening and greening the city in as many ways as we can as well. So yeah, next one, please. Oh.
Cool. Just a brief bit about the new site that we've got that Robin mentioned. It's in Hume. It's on a slip road, an unused slip road in Hume, and it's like 500 meters of space where we've got plans drawn up for like planters. We want to plant a fruit orchard, and it's going to be our first sort of really open public site that isn't an allotment community garden, so people can come and go. And the idea is that it's going to be a really collaborative, open project, open to new ideas, and we are in the process of drawing up those ideas, and we are welcoming a lot of contributions and a lot of collaborations and efforts there. So if there is anyone in this chat today that is interested in it, then it's a space that we would like to open up to discussion of what people want to do. We hope for, roughly to have a cafe set up there. And we are going to be working with Manchester Metropolitan University as well. There are some people there that want to work on bird conservation and put up bird houses and monitor air pollution levels, because the place in which this slip road is, it's on Princess Parkway, and it is an extremely polluted area, and we find that really interesting as a way of kind of making that site a really green corridor and a place within the urban city centre that we can start encouraging growing and engaging the local community and the university and students of the area to participate in these workshops that we will hopefully be running. And so the city or any other organisation that would want to be part of that could run workshops with us. That's part of the green prescriptions ideas and motives of getting people to come outside more and engage with these things that we found over lockdown have really been used more. People have been out in green spaces more, and it's had an impact on well-being positively. And this site in the centre will hopefully be a way in which that can keep on people's radar. So yeah, if you have any interest in being part of that, have any ideas of, it's really early days. We have like rough ideas and plans, but they are evolving and changing. There is details of our email and stuff, so get in touch and we can add you to the meetings, and it can be a bit like this. We can all speak about what we want to do with it. So yeah, the invitation is there. And what's the next slide? Yes, Millie, over to you.
Hello, so I'm Millie from the Gaskell Garden Project, and here to talk to you a bit about the Spiral Garden Cafe, which we do, which is it's a pay-as-you-feel 3-course meal ran bi-monthly from the Old Abbey Tap House, and our team uses primarily surplus food and our own fresh grown garden produce to create the food. We aim to create an all-inclusive place where anyone can come and eat healthy food and feel safe and welcome. It's a status-free zone where basically everyone is just there to have a good time, hopefully learn a bit about nutrition and just meet new people, have new conversations, which is one of our main principles. In the past, we've kind of incorporated things like DJ sets, art auctions, poetry readings, open mic sessions, and so many more ways that our community can express themselves. And the pay-as-you-feel element of the cafe allows people to contribute to their local community, as well as allowing people who might not be able to afford meals out to be included in the same environment. Yeah, so another thing that we want to do is kind of like incorporate and connect other projects and organisations into the pay-as-you-feel meals, because we've sort of found that in the past they've been good ways to, yeah, just like bridge new connections, I guess, between different people, different organisations, because we sort of share a common belief that food is a really good facilitator in allowing people to meet each other and talk about what they do, because we all love food. And yeah, that's the cafe.
So yeah, Nathan was going to say a bit about this, but he's going to do a surplus pickup right now. So it pretty much, we can just go quickly through it. It's a similar initiative to Sow the City, which is an amazing project. The work you're doing is great. We have been doing, as part of greening up the city and recognizing the need for like a breath of green air in something that is so urban and, you know, all encompassing with cars, we have been doing guerrilla gardening, and some of our sites have been like places like GP surgeries in Moss Side, but also guerrilla being the idea that we take a bit of green land, the bit of grass that hasn't been used and that should be used, and just creating it into somewhere where you can grow a herb garden or fruit and vegetables, whoever comes by. And the idea with permaculture is that the soil regenerates and works with itself, so we don't need to be there tending to it all the time. It really will give itself the season and people can take the fruit from it. Pallet benches is another project that we're running at the moment, where we are creating benches out of pallets and putting them in nice spaces to encourage people to be outside, and encourage people to sit and have conversations, especially as restrictions ease. Vertical growing is just how we can grow more in our own spaces, how we can grow in spaces that are confined. In cities, we don't always have big gardens. We know that trying to find our new sites, it's, you know, it's hard to come by. It's like gold dust occasionally. And yes, Sow the City, a shout out to you guys for the work that you're doing. It's amazing. These green spaces and green corridors for wildlife is becoming more and more important and acknowledged by the government and by all these organisations that are working towards making our cities more green. Surplus supermarket is something that we're doing on the side of our surplus project, which Robin, you could say something about and maybe touch on surplus a little bit quickly. I know you were going to say something about it.
Yeah, no, so part of the surplus project, again, as I said earlier, was like creating those conversations. So we've got these big corporations such as supermarkets, and as we know, they've intersected different kind of projects like Fair Share, and they're starting to have their corporate responsibility of disposing of their waste properly. But we also realise that we're doing them quite a service, being a volunteer-based organisation, collecting their waste for them and distributing it outward. So we would really love to make, not only create these surplus supermarkets in locations such as Old Abbey Tap House, as well as in our site in the Plattfields Market Garden, so that people could have a donation basis food shop one day a week in different locations. But it's also about understanding that it's amazing that we can distribute this waste, but a big problem is why is there so much of this waste still existing? And that's something that is where these conversations go, where we're also working on a documentary to kind of document all this food that we're collecting and distributing elsewhere as well. Yeah, what's the next slide? Because I think that's pretty much it on the service.
Yeah, I think, okay, so this is just, yeah, the last kind of bit is this idea of a thing that matters a lot to us in all the work that we're doing with people is longevity and it lasting and it creating radical social change, and radical being something that lasts and something that actually makes a difference for time to come. And so these things like skills sharing and collaborations and this new site and wanting to incorporate ideas that are current and that are needed and refreshed is something that is a key thing of why we're doing this and why we feel empowered by working with people, and why we all come together and kind of don't have to just constantly be there doing those things. We learn those skills and we go and we create new moments and new projects and new gardens elsewhere. And that's kind of what this feast's about. It's coming together and learning from each other, drawing each other's skills and each other's strengths and each other's inspirations and ideas, and then going away and doing those things in our own communities. So that is, we are with you on that. And that's a big part of what we believe in and what we want to promote. And this is just our email address and our Facebook for any kind of comments. We're speaking to the council at the moment about this new site, and we would love any kind of comments and moments of support that you'd want to share, because they really do help us with the kind of case of getting this space and this land to do these things. We have a potential of getting even more, and yeah, through that we would like your collaboration, your ideas as well. So come to us with those, and we can join together and collaborate. Thank you very much.
So, I mean, Millie, Nathan, Izzy, Dan, Robin, thank you so much. And the inspiration of all these presentations tonight really is to demonstrate that people end up doing things that they didn't know they were going to do, because you begin at one end of the spectrum. I mean, as you talked about, Dan, which was like, we do something that we want to do because we want to lead a better life ourselves. And we want what we do to be related to the values that we have. And then, 6 years later, you're running all of these things and doing all of these things, which basically, is to do with like following your heart and then working out how to practically make that real. So again, constantly urging people on this call, activism is just, a version of being active around your heart. And these community feasts will be something, they'll turn into something that you don't know what it will be like yet, but it will be exciting. Right, so you can turn off your presentation now, whoever wants to do that.
It's at the top, just by that bar, the little green recording bar. Yeah.
Oh yeah, done. Well done. Okay, so back to the group. Any thoughts or questions that have come up from that? Anybody? No, just again, fantastic work. It is very inspiring, isn't it, to see it all. Rachel, I mean, would you, I mean, earlier we were hearing that, I think it was John was saying that Manchester could be a lot better than it is. It's got these sort of patches of stuff, but the infrastructure is still perhaps not fully understood or supported in terms of policy making. But what do you think these community feasts could do in terms of promoting a kind of sense of neighbourhood policy around food and community?
I think there's a big opportunity, and it comes down to what GGP is talking about. About 2 years ago, our community is in Hume Moss Side, and we had all the Windrush issues, and people we knew were being deported. And because we'd all put on these activities, some like sit-down meals, gigs, and generally these grassroots events that weren't for money, they were just about meeting each other. When it came down to it, we were able to organise, and within 2 days, 500 people were in this room, and we stopped people being deported. And I think what I say, one of the big words this year is community resilience. And I think informal events such as the feast are perfect ways that you get to know your neighbours. Nadim's here, and he's literally my neighbour, and we've only met this year through this feast project. So I'm really hoping the feast will create these networks that were there forever. And also, I wasn't interested in food. I'm a people person. But when the beginning of lockdown happened, there was all these elderly residents that couldn't get food because Asda had sold out. And I suddenly realised how vulnerable we were all to it, and how I've heard stories in Glasgow from my friends who run food banks that a lady died in her house because she was starving, and that's our neighbours. And I don't think I could live with myself if I knew that was happening. So what I've got from doing the meals, and I do everything from cooking the food, putting the labels on, ringing people up, doing the buddy calls, and also assisting people. But I've met some amazing older people through it, and they're people who wouldn't normally have come to the pub. And that's all from the food, and food is such a universal thing. And Robert Kennedy is a human rights charity, but what we can do with food is human rights, as Dan showed. It was about refugees and how you can show they're part of the community. So I think there's just so much potential with these feasts to lead on to other things in the future, and give everyone that knowledge we need at the moment around food, community resilience, sustainability that we need to bring forward.
And welcoming and community that's about including, not just like a tribe that is self-sufficient and doesn't want to look outwards. I think it is about building bridges. So look, we haven't got much time left, but I wanted to just pick up with people who haven't spoken and just see like where you're up to in your thinking. You haven't got to. So Gemma Saunders, I think you just joined us tonight for the first time. Am I right? Are you there, Gemma?
I am, sorry.
No, it's all right. What have you taken from tonight?
I have got lots of people I want to contact for meetings. I've got a lot to think about. I actually helped set up Eat Well with Mary Ellen. So I work on that with her, and there's loads of things that obviously she said that we want to do and lots of people to reach out to, and John's been on my list for a while to chat to, and cracking good food, but also these excellent things going on around Hume and the Platfields Market Garden we've already done a bit of work with, but just there's it's exciting. There's lots more stuff to get stuck in with, and I'm going to think about the feast and how we might be involved or what we could do.
Great. I mean, this is where we're at the moment. We're kind of forming and storming. You haven't got to know yet. Susan, you've just put in that you are thinking of using the land in the close. I think that's a great idea. Are you there, Susan?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks. I'm kind of. It's just an idea. I share an allotment with my friend in Levenshulme, and you know, and it was just really interesting. I came back with garlic and some other stuff, and got chatting to some of the people on the close, and gave them some, and you know, and it was just and like I say, there's these bits of land that are just kind of fenced off and nothing happening with them. And I asked Trafford Housing if I could grow things, and they said yes, and they got me a compost bin and stuff. So I'm just starting that. But to be honest, it feels like it was really a million years ago. I did a few weeks at Women's Aid and met some children who were malnourished, and was really shocked that they didn't know what carrots were. And it's always kind of stuck with me that they had no idea what they were. And yeah, so it's been an idea in my head, and I just really liked it. And like I say, you know, it just feels like the idea of the feast in September, it gives me a solid goal, really, you know, to get planting stuff, to grow stuff, to then think about what we could cook, how I'm going to get people interested, you know. I was just really, you know, it was just lovely when I gave people the garlic, and they, you know, and they were just, you know, overjoyed because it tastes much better than the stuff you get in the shops, obviously. And yeah, so yeah, it's just a kind of an idea and a bit of a dream at the moment. But yeah, this has been really helpful. It's been
good. Never underestimate a hunch. You kind of a hunch I could do something. That means you can do it, and we can, you know, we can support you to be courageous, you know, and also to kind of put you in connection with other people. Shelley, what about you? How are you doing? You there, Shelley?
Sorry, I'm eating a bit tea.
You're all right. That's right. We're allowed to be eating and drinking. That's the whole point, isn't it? Yeah.
So I've just been chatting to Gemma from Cracking Good Food on the side.
Great.
About doing something together. So that's a wonderful connection. At the moment, I'm still trying to reach out to some of our more vulnerable groups in Stockport and get those connections going to see if we can all join together and each bring a different food from a different culture with a bit of history behind it, and do a sharing experience. And then we're hoping to add the poetry from Ripples of Hope.
Great.
So if there's any groups out there sort of Stockport based who would like to join in, then please get in touch. That would be fabulous. I am officially Michelle Shine, and I'm a librarian with Stockport Libraries. So I can whiz my email in the group, and if there's anybody sort of who would like to come together in Stockport, we've booked the 14th of September. And so we've got a place now, so it's just moving forwards, creating and bringing people together.
All right, so that's an example, like that somebody's put their mark on the sand, as it were, and kind of like we're doing it, and then it will build its momentum. I can promise. Anne Marie, there you are in Salford. What's your current state of play or being or thinking?
It's really interesting. I work for Salford CVS, and we support different VCSE groups and organisations across Salford. It's just made me realise, because, especially around the growing side, because obviously there's been the focus on fees because my colleague's been here before Lesmond. But it's just interesting about the allotment, and, like Salford has a really good allotment network. So it is about getting that message out to the allotment holders, because, yes, September is always a glut because we've got a few allotment holders, in our work, and we suddenly get a, table full of, radishes or whatever. But I think for me, it's like, how do we connect into that existing network and, connecting them to the different fees. So I will be calling you, Rachel, just to double check what's happening in Salford and what we can do to support that connection in Salford.
Yeah, because there's a big head of steam in Salford, isn't there, Rachel? Okay. All right.
I'll be in touch.
You'll be in touch. Okay. Alison, what about you?
Hi, so I work at a school in North Manchester, Abraham Moss, and we're going to plan a community feast probably within the school community, because we've been unable to do anything like that for so long. We have a number of international new arrival families in poverty and so on. We're operating a food bank at the moment, and food is just such a good connecting point. But from everything I've heard tonight, I do have a bit of a hunch about setting up a community garden, and ideally that would be public, because we joined together two sites, a primary and a secondary. So there is some space sort of between the two buildings that we might be able to do something with. And I'm just wondering if anyone out there, so the city, John, or anybody, might be able to help with, maybe with the younger children, the primary age, or some of the other kids.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to help. Yeah, I think I've actually worked in Abraham Moss secondary before, a long time ago. But yeah, happy to help. Just get in touch. I think I put my email in the chat bit.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great. Hunches. Just keep remembering, people, having a hunch, often means you think, well, somebody ought to do something, and you look around, you think, well, nobody else is doing it. It's going to be me, isn't it? And you always have that moment. You think, oh shit, I can't. Surely I can't. But then you can, and you will. Steve, how are you tonight?
Great, thanks. It does my heart good to see so many people doing so many things already. I already know a few people on the screen, and I've been annoying them for a while. I think we're very much at Ascension Church Hume. We're very much dreamers, really. We just our thing is, what can we do? Because we don't know what we can't do yet. So if we just kind of putting it out there to see how we can help. So we're looking at maybe doing some light bulb sort of cooperatives to, lower people's energy bills, or be a venue for Rachel for some of her feasts. Or we want to sort of gather artists and musicians together as well, and just be a place where people can enjoy being human beings.
Okay, so you're still building that plan. That is great.
Yeah, we got our building back this week, so we're happy.
Great. Hazel, how about you?
Hi, yes, I'm from Manchester Amnesty Group. So we'd originally you know, we really would like to be involved, because obviously human rights is sort of the whole reason that all our members join together every month. I feel it feels slightly that we're sort of a bit out of sync though, because we're not a community as such. So we'd put a couple of ideas to Maria, but I'm still getting my head around it, if I'm honest, about how we can move forward with it. We thought about, you know, possibly getting all the campaigning groups from around Manchester together, you know, the human rights sort of campaigning groups together as one possibility. But, you know, at the beginning of the project, we'd sort of really liked that idea, which I think Nadeem spoke about at the beginning, of we tend to be preaching to each other much too much, and we'd much rather be meeting new people. So that's our dilemma, I think. But I know that Anna's been in touch with Maria about a couple of ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. I something will develop, you know, like trust the process of the dialogue, and something will happen. I mean, interestingly enough, about like NGOs, although in theory they all know each other and work together, actually in reality people don't. And so there's nothing wrong with the idea of pulling together all of those people and developing a level of conversation which might not normally happen.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, we occasionally will run joint events and things, but you're just sort of rushing around doing the business rather than actually.
Yeah. So it might still be a good idea, but let's follow it through.
Yeah.
Lee, how are you, Lee? Unmute.
Hi all. Yeah, Lee Mrabty from Manchester Libraries. So I've just come in on this, but really inspired by everything heard tonight. So I work for South area, so 9 libraries around South Manchester. So libraries, we're used to doing events. We do lots of events. We have loads of community groups, some that use our spaces, some that we run. So we don't know what it's going to be yet, but definitely inspired and know that it'll be something wonderful. And as an example, one of my libraries is Fallowfield Library, the place at Platt Lane. So obviously I'd be really interested talking to you folks down at Plattfields Park, because we are neighbours. So yeah, very inspired, very excited.
Great. Siobhan, can I come to you?
Hi, yeah. Well, I've got our performance space booked. So I'm at Central Library. So I've got 2 other colleagues here tonight who are from libraries as well. So I'm representing just Central Library. So our performance space is booked that weekend for a feast. So if there are any groups or organisations that want to come and join us for some sort of feast spectacular, you're very welcome to get in touch with me. It's fantastic to hear all the different speakers tonight about all the fantastic work they're doing, because you hear little snippets, you know, as you talk to other people, but to get a good understanding is really, really helpful. So I'm just keen to get some feedback from Rachel from her database, hopefully, of if we can match anybody up with us. We've got great links with the community, but it'd also be really lovely if there are people already here who want to come and join us in our space.
And who did you bring from the other libraries with you, Siobhan?
Paul is here as well.
Hi, Paul. Do you want to just say anything?
Hello, Paula, not Paul.
Paula, sorry. Hi, Paula. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so I'm also just kind of come into it at this point. So we'll be putting something on at Longsight Library, and we've got loads of great kind of community links. I'm already starting to think about seeing if we could maybe do something with Let's Keep Growing, who are based in Longsight. And of course there's the Bengalis Women's Association. So that was great to be reminded about their growing and their allotment that they've got at their grounds. And we've also been doing quite a lot of work over the last couple of years with sanctuary seekers, specifically through City of Sanctuary. And I was kind of thinking, there might be a kind of way of linking them. We work with Celebrating Syria from Rethink Rebuild. So there's kind of quite lots of different community groups, but what I'd really like to be able to do is get all those groups not only mixing with each other, but with the wider kind of Longside community. So yeah, it's all just kind of starting to wear away. I have just messaged Hazel as well, just to say, oh, yep, did you get me? Just to say, I'd be interested in maybe talking with you about doing something. So yeah, just ideas whirring. I think our biggest thing will be just maybe not going too huge. I think that'll be the danger. So
yeah, I understand, like being able to manage it so that you can, yeah. Maggie, are you there? Maggie Joan?
Hi.
Hiya. Any thoughts from tonight?
No, I'm working with a couple of different groups in my area, but they're doing some stuff separate from Festival of Hope. And I'm more looking at something just local
Okay.
to where I live.
Okay, that sounds already good. You know, we want things to operate on lots of different scales, from, you know, something in somebody's back garden through to, you know, something large. So
yeah, well,
yeah,
I back into a park, so it's quite a good location.
Sounds great. Kinjiro, I think last time we spoke, you were working out where you could volunteer or what you could be part of. Are you still in that space?
Yes. Yes. Yes, actually, today's session is great to get lots of information. But then at the same time, I think I feel I have to digest how we can do, or how I could do. And there seems to be some kind of overlap between John's great talk and also GGP's talk. So I wonder which area is overlap, which area is missing. I think as for example, Rachel might create a database, and we can make clear vision which area is missing, which areas we need more work on, and so on. So that would also useful to find out how myself can get inside of that gap or space.
Yes,
yeah.
That's true. I think that when we have got the database and the toolkit and the kind of beginning of the map, which is beginning to evolve, then we will also be able to say there's a need here. Could somebody help here? And we'll do that, Kinjiro.
Yeah, thank you.
Steph?
Hello. Yes. So brilliant evening. Loads of really, really brilliant information. I'm representing an arts organisation in Bury. And I came off the back of the last session, went to our lovely little consortium of community organisations that work with lots of different communities in the town, and talked to them about this and said, what do you think? And was just hit with an immediate, yes, what do we do? So that's lovely. So we've got loads of goodwill and loads of support. It's just about now thinking about what the plan is. Several different venues. I mean, something could happen with us at the Met. That would be lovely. We've also got a fantastic community venue that's kind of almost across the road, really the other side of the ring road at the Mosses Centre, which is looked after by a charity called ADAB, who are fantastic and completely on board. So we've got quite a lot of different options to consider. So it'll just be about refining down exactly what it is that we want to do, what our target audiences are, and all of that. Off the back of this evening, we've also got a really good relationship with the Lancashire Wildlife Trust, who have just started running one of their programmes in Bury, but with the green social prescribing, I'll catch up with them and see whether there's anything on the growing side of things that we can pursue there. And I came completely with my berry hat on, but I'll just go slide my berry hat off and put my Oldham one on, because I also work for an arts organisation in Oldham. And we work really closely with a school who do loads of community gardening and farming, and it would just seem absolutely ridiculous to not have a conversation with them about what we might be able to do in Oldham. So yeah, leave that one with me.
That sounds great.
Can I just add something there quickly, Jude? There is a group in Oldham, Steph, that are gathering together, including Northern Roots, the gallery. So let's link up together and make sure we join up, because that sounds perfect.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Northern Roots are fantastic, and we're close with the gallery as well. So I'll just drop you a line from my Peshkar email address so that you've got that info.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
Pat, how are you doing with the school project? Unmute.
Yeah. Well, I'm in awe of really what's going on in the communities. Not aware really of everything that's going on, and I just think that the schools and the kids in schools are the future communities, and the skills that I've heard tonight need to go into the kids in the schools, as they're going to be the future of the communities. And I'm thinking maybe workshops within schools from the chefs and the other organisations, so that young people understand what is going on in their community and what they can actually get involved with. But I want to have a celebration in the schools that I work in, and I want the whether that can happen in the space of time that we've got, I don't know, but the schools that can perhaps, and my idea was, and the person from Bury is the East Lancs steam train, and to have carriages of young people that have actually grown or made the food that they can eat within those carriages on a trip on the steam train, call it a feast journey. And yeah, lots of ideas come to light. Whether we can get the people that have been talking tonight into the schools to do the workshops, to engage the young people in whatever feast we decide. Yeah, very, very inspirational. But it is the young people in the schools that will be the future communities, and they need to know now what they will be able to do, you know, in the years to come. So yeah. I think there's a lot there.
Great, thank you. And I think apart from all our teams and people have already spoken, I think, Lucas, you're the finale here. So.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely evening. I'm actually not from Manchester. I'm from Edinburgh, but
loud. I'm from Liverpool. You're okay.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, I had a question open to the floor actually. Just wondering how you make these initiatives more available to people, because I think it's, if you can spread all these initiatives more and more, then you can actually create change.
Do you mean like all the three that we've spoken about tonight? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like how to spread it.
John, I'll throw you that question actually. How do you see things like this being able to become mainstreamed, I suppose, so that everybody can have an availability of community gardens, everybody can feel that they can get social prescription, etc. Where do you see that going?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is with social enterprises that, you know, we're a sort of functioning business, and you know, we're not reliant on grant funding particularly. We can, I guess we lead by example, and I think it feels like over the time that So the City's existed, that people start to you know, sit up and take note, it's not always a quick process, but they start to see that this is possible, and then start to copy it. And you know, we totally were inspired by organizations like the Kindling Trust when we first set up, and you know, I hope that kind of, you know, long may that continue, that kind of process of people being inspired by others, and you know, and things being replicated. I mean, So the City was very much, we copied a model from an organisation called Food Up Front in London, where they were growing in a community in front gardens, and people were kind of, you know, it was like a sort of social project really, as well as a food growing project. People were meeting their neighbours. So I think just, yeah, I mean, there's great examples out there, aren't there? So if we just keep plugging at it, I think people take note, really.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget, once upon a time, people had to invent parks. They had to invent swimming pools, you know. So these things take on kind of collective power, as Jon says, by basically doing them well, and other people saying, "I want one." So
yeah, I mean, we just on one last thing. We often say that a community garden is actually like a kind of public resource that you know, should be the same as a library. There's people from libraries here, and we think that you know, it's actually a very cheap library. They don't cost that much to set up, but it provides a really useful resource, and we think that every you know, ward in Manchester should have that as a you know, something that people can access.
Yeah. So I mean, part of the kind of idea of this is to support the initiatives that are happening through the feasts being a kind of vivid example of why all these different things need to happen. And then you'll all become kind of, you know, passionate ambassadors for this whole movement of food and community, because you just will, and if you're not already. So look, I think we've had quite a marathon this evening. It's been really rewarding, and thank you everybody for speaking, and thank you Rachel for organising it as ever. Brilliant. We've said that we'll come back to you just after Easter with the toolkit and with a database of connectivity, and that we'll start then speaking on an individual basis to you. There'll be still more people coming into this movement, and if you meet anybody and they say, "Oh, that sounds fantastic, how do I get involved?" Well, you know, just get them involved. It's a very ecumenical process, this. It's just for anybody. And any other questions or thoughts that people want to add in before we bring it to a close? No? Okay, well, I'm starving. So all this talk of food, etc., I'm absolutely starving. So lots of love, everybody. And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Fab evening. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks now.